5 years old is too young to fend for yourself. By T. Caring. Approximately 10,000 words. Content warning. 5 years old is too young to fend for yourself is a dark story, including child abuse, starvation, and losing hope in a system built to break it. Reader discretion is advised. Chapter 1. The innocent question that started the nightmare. March 28th, 3965. It was right before lunchtime when I asked my father if I could meet Madame Maria's children for my birthday. It was something I had been begging for since I discovered she had a child, let alone when she married, having gained a stepchild. The innocent little question that changed my life. From that of a spoiled brat to a child who basically had to raise herself.
Daddy, can I meet Jack and Kyle?
I asked the tall man as I approached the dining room table. The old wooden thing was still as solid as it had been thousands of years ago when it was first created. The room itself had blinding white walls that were mostly covered with paintings thousands of years older than I. I always felt slightly claustrophobic in this room. It was on the smaller side for a royal dining room, but it was Queen Lilith's favorite. Father's silent chuckle, alongside the gleam of humor in his violet eyes as he answered, would never have prepared me for what was to come.
I'm not the person to ask that question to. Why don't you ask Madame Maria herself?
Father gestured behind me to the woman who was all but my birth mother. Madame Maria's stiff, formal attire was undercut by the small, amused smile on her face as she tried to hide a giggle with her fist. She was always dressed to the nines, hair held in tight buns, but she could never keep a straight face around me. Madame Maria was my caretaker, hence had raised me in place of my birth mother, Queen Lilith. Unlike the queen, she was a loving, caring woman. I had been working up the courage to call her mom for the last several weeks, but I always got cold feet halfway through. Did Madame Maria even consider me as her own child? I didn't know, but the thought of being rejected hurt more than calling her Madame Maria.
But Madame Maria always says it's not up to her.
My voice was high-pitched as I dragged out the her in my sentence. I had been clearly whining, hoping to change my father's opinion, but he stood firm.
It's not up to me either. Ask your mother when she arrives for lunch. She'll tell you a definitive answer.
Father put me on his lap before hugging me. His long black velvet robe covered his arms, but his hands were as cold as they always were. Cold skin came naturally to those with ice-type magic, including me. I looked like a miniature female version of my father, with white hair, violet eyes, pale white skin tinged violet, and even his damned Roman nose.
But Queen Lilith hates me,
I said, my voice once again resembling that of a dying chicken in pitch. Father huffed a laugh, his voice full of amusement as he said,
Your mother doesn't hate you. She loves you deeply but has a hard time showing it. She wasn't raised by the most affectionate of people either, after all.
Father kissed my forehead, his magic wrapping around me as it often did when we sat together. Mine joined it in a slow dance, resembling a father teaching his child the waltz in a snow-covered field. It was a safe, peaceful feeling as our magic joined. I had nearly forgotten my question until Father's low, rumbling voice interrupted the semi-doze I had fallen into.
I have to go, but your mother is here. Why don't you ask her?
Was Queen Lilith here? I looked over my shoulder to see the queen standing still. I would have thought she was frozen in place, if not for her twitching fingers with small sparks of fire igniting in her hands. What had upset her so much? Why had she glared at us as if trying to set us on fire? I definitely didn't want to ask my question now, especially as Father put me down from his lap. Frozen in place, I felt as if I were exposed to the glaring rays of the summer sun, rather than the cool early spring temperatures in the palace.
Ask me what?
came the sharply pointed barb from the woman who called herself my mother, even if she refused to allow me the privilege of calling her my mother.
It's nothing bad, just try to keep an open mind about it, all right?
Father walked around me to kiss Queen Lilith on the forehead, as he had done to me just moments before. The Queen's heated glare never left Father's form, easing the heat I felt from her angry magic as he walked away from me. My stance became looser as the heat left me, but my breath still caught with every word Queen Lilith said.
Stay away from our daughter.
It was as if Queen Lilith hoped to set Father on fire with her words alone. I could hear the veiled threat laced in those words, the anger she was barely keeping under control. But it was as if Father didn't consider her a threat. Instead, he chuckled, asking,
Or what? Will you chain me to my bed again? We had a lot of fun last time you did that.
The implication went over my head. I just wondered why being chained to a bed would be fun for anyone, let alone why Queen Lilith would chain Father to one. Queen Lilith's cheeks tinged a slight pink, her stance softening minutely as she pointed to the dining room door. Get out! We will talk later,
Yes, my queen.
Father said, still with a slight tinge of humor in his voice, before he kissed Queen Lilith on the lips. His smile only dimmed slightly when she didn't return the favor.
I love you.
Father's chest flattened when Queen Lilith remained silent. His smile was little more than a pained grimace as he walked out of the dining room. Queen Lilith's glare remained on his back long after his form disappeared. The sight of him disappearing around the corner felt like someone had twisted my gut with an emotion ever so familiar, yet I couldn't name it. Why did Queen Lilith act like she couldn't even stand him any time they were together? How were they considered the powerhouse couple of Norfarland if Queen Lilith hated his very guts? It never made sense to me. However, when Queen Lilith's hard, dark violet eyes turned to me, it was with significantly less venom than she had shown Father. I still felt like a bug under examination, but at least it no longer felt like the sun itself was glaring at me.
Stay away from your father. That man has no good intentions for you.
What did Queen Lilith mean by that? The Queen turned away from me, her cherry red heels clicking on the white marble flooring as she walked past me to the seat of the head of the family, a role she held formally as ruler of Norfarland, but everyone knew Father was the more powerful one in all aspects, even then. He was one of the 10 most powerful gods in existence. That he played house with us at all was a minor miracle. My family's history is full of god emperors all but ditching their spouses, only to appear again when they want something. Grandfather was among them, and so were my 2 closest great-grandmothers. The last god emperor to help raise their children was my 3 times great-grandmother, Asta. But I didn't know that at the time. All I knew was that Queen Lilith chased off my loving father. As such, I was more than a little put out when Queen Lilith ordered me to my seat.
Sit.
However, even at my young age, I wasn't idiotic enough to deny her. The woman terrified me, after all. So, with little more than a huff accompanied by a pout, I sat in my chair to the right of Queen Lilith. The chair itself was smaller than Lilith's, but still larger than the one next to me that Madame Maria sat in. Servants entered the room with plates full of Mexican food. It wasn't my favorite by a long shot, but I was partial to the quesadillas. Something about the mix of bell peppers, onions, and chicken, coated in cheese, just tickled my brain. It wasn't until halfway through our meal that Queen Lilith addressed the elephant in the room.
What did you ask your father, Emily?
Her voice no longer had the barbed tone it once had. Instead, it sounded once again like sickeningly sweet honey. I had gotten used to her false mood swings over the years. I knew better than to believe she was actually in a better mood. No, she was still moments from exploding. This was not the right time to ask her about seeing other children. She was the one insistent on my staying isolated from everyone, after all. I felt Queen Lilith's glare become more heated as I remained silent. I couldn't stay silent forever, but I didn't know what to ask that wouldn't cause her to explode. Maybe permission to paint my room? It was still the blinding pitch white it was painted even before I was born. However, there had to be a reason every room in the palace was pitch white, right? No, that was a stupid thing to ask for. She would have said no after all. What else could I ask? For a less girly outfit? To be allowed... My rambling thoughts were interrupted by Madame Maria's quietly amused voice. Her posh southern accent showed through even years after having moved to the capital.
Princess Emily was asking for permission to meet my children. She has been asking for the last several months, but I told her it was not up to me to answer. So she took it into her own hands and asked her father, despite my telling her, repeatedly, that I would ask you when the time was appropriate.
Madame Maria ran her fingers through my loose hair. A soft, amused smile accompanied the pointed barb at my lack of patience. She was clearly more amused than irritated with me. Queen Lilith huffed, less of an amused laugh in which I associated with my father, but a more dismissive sound.
No.
She said, dismissing the question without a second thought. With that, my hopes were dashed. Irritation replaced them. My quesadilla, which I had been merely shuffling around my plate, felt the brunt of my anger as I stabbed it hard with my fork.
Besides, you know I don't want Emily anywhere near that bastard son of my brother. Why in the world did you marry your own ex-husband's lover? I do not know, but I don't want my daughter around such low-born filth. I should have declared Lucia a traitor alongside my brother. It's only through my grace that your family is free at all, let alone reserving Jack a title after his father's stunt.
What did Queen Lilith mean by that? All I had heard about my uncle was good. Even Queen Lilith spoke of him kindly on most days. Something about how he helped end the war with Norway by calming the rebels, despite him already having been declared a traitor. Either way, it irritated me to hear Queen Lilith talking about the uncle I looked up to, let alone talk down to the woman I considered more my mother than Queen Lilith.
Understood, Queen Lilith.
Madame Maria was quiet, her voice no longer carrying the humor it once held. Instead, it sounded pained, as she looked at her plate with her head bowed low. I couldn't stand to see the woman who cared for me so much be berated. I blamed that for the worst decision of my early life.
Come on, Mom. If Queen Lilith is going to be cruel to you for no reason, then we don't need to be here.
I said, standing up before pulling Madame Maria up behind me. However, one venom-laced, honeyed sentence froze me in my tracks.
What did you call Maria, Emily?
Queen Lilith was beyond pissed, and I recognized it instantly.
Mom?
I asked, unsure if I was answering Queen Lilith's question or questioning what Queen Lilith would do to me. Queen Lilith had sparks of fire surrounding her. The sound of grinding teeth accompanied Queen Lilith's expression of pure hatred. Madame Maria's arms wrapped around me as I heard her plead.
Please, my queen, punish me. Emily is just a child. She doesn't know better.
Only for her pleas to fall on deaf ears.
You will both be punished. Guards, take Madame Maria away to the dungeon. She'll be punished later.
The guards in each corner of the dining room jumped into action. The sound of metal armor clanking against each other, hard-soled boots stomping on the ground filled the room. The sound of fabric ripping as Madame Maria was grabbed by the collar of her long red dress before they ripped me out of her arms. My arm twisted painfully as I tried to reach for her. Madame Maria's face was awash with terror, eyes wide, bolting from place to place as if looking for an escape. She pleaded with everyone in the room as she was dragged out of the dining room, as if she were a madwoman.
As for you, my daughter, you are going to be spending the next 5 days alone in your room to think. No food, no entertainment, nothing but your own thoughts to keep you company. We'll see who you call Mom after that.
Queen Lilith waved her hand as if waving an inconvenience away, rather than sentencing her own daughter to a slow, painful death.
Take her away. I still have lunch to finish.
As the doors closed behind us, I reached out to Queen Lilith. The queen took a casual bite of food as I pleaded for my life.
Mom, please, no! Mom!
That was the last I saw of Queen Lilith for the next 5 days, and her casual disregard terrified me more than anything else had.